And we're back. Welcome back to the Backyard Bougie podcast. Sorry we took a little bit of time off, but we were out celebrating our daughter's 21st birthday.
Milestone.
Big milestone, right?
Yeah.
And had a chance to go on a cruise to multiple places in Mexico. Visited Cabo San Lucas, La Paz in Baja California, as well as Todos Santos. Then we went on to Mazatlan and Puerto Vallarta, but we're finally back stateside and looking forward to getting a couple more episodes out to hopefully help entertain our audience, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's been nice. It was a nice reboot that we all needed, and to connect with our daughter on another level with her boyfriend. And it was really nice. It was a nice getaway, even though we missed our younger ones and our older one. But hey, you know, you sometimes just got to divide and conquer in order to connect with each one at their own level of where they're at. So
that's right. Yeah. No, it was a blast.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a blast. We had a chance to do some amazing tequila tasting. And as you can see, we're continuing our ventures in Mexico with we call this our keto margarita, trying to stay low carb. So we're using some allulose in there instead of the normal high sugar content. I guess it's normally like a sweetener that they would use, like an agave syrup or sometimes even a simple syrup. But we're just using an allulose syrup to try to help keep it low carb. But we do have some fresh Chula tequila in there. It's some Reposado, and it's from our good friends over at the office in Los Cabos in Medano Beach. And that is their kind of house tequila, but nonetheless a fantastic Reposado. Probably a little overkill for a margarita, but
it's
we
amazing.
like it.
You won't regret it at all.
No, it's very good. But nonetheless, cheers to all of our friends over at the office. We love you guys. We miss you already, even though it's only been about a week or so. But we'll see you guys back here shortly, as it's kind of our home away from home. But with that said, we're kicking off episode 3 today already.
Yeah.
And it's, I guess, about me.
Yeah,
and
it is, boo.
Building off of this whole shoe conversation we had with Mrs. Gorgeous over here with her stilettos, muck boots, and her flip-flops. I am building off of that same theme, going after kind of the loafers. Not sure if you can see my loafers I've got on today, but cowboy boots and cleats. And so looking forward to kind of sharing a little bit with our audience about me and kind of why I chose loafers, cowboy boots, and cleats as my shoe theme. But with that said, I think there's probably no better place to start than just kind of sharing a little bit about me and my background and kind of how we got to where we're at today. But I've been primarily committed to this podcast with Mrs. Gorgeous, as she kind of had this vision and this passion about 3 years ago, kind of coming out of the COVID pandemic and really through some different technological issues early on. And then obviously, as our listeners heard in the first episode, really pivoting our life and spending some time taking care of your folks and kind of their last moments of life. We kind of had to put a pause on that. But ultimately, I saw the vision of this really coming to light for us and our family, just as a way to kind of continue to encourage people. And when we thought about putting together a podcast and kind of building off of this theme of the Backyard Bougie, it's just this sense of building community. And where that's really derived from me is just kind of in my upbringing as a child, getting an opportunity to build relationships with so many people that meant so much to me as a kid growing up, and really fostering relationship and learning how important and significant that relationship was to me, both as a young boy growing up and, you know, now kind of moving into, you know, more of that midlife adulthood. And part of that for me, I think where the best places to start is, you know, just having grown up as a kid, kind of in, you know, pretty normal suburbia America, but coming from a single parent household. You know, my mom was a single mom raising my sister and I in kind of Orange County, California. And through that journey as a kid, really learning that there's so much that relationship and community offers, the whole saying of it takes a village to raise kids really stood out and really represented kind of what my childhood was about.
Absolutely. And you growing up in a single family home, me growing up with both my parents in the home, there was a lot of similarities too in the time of which Orange County had a lot of growth pressure in many assets. And so, to connect, and when we discovered and found each other, we were at unique spots, different that one would say is at each end of the spectrum, but there was so much common ground between our upbringing that was kind of crazy. You were encouraged to branch out, which I thought was phenomenal, that usually a single family home adds to seclusion and isolation. But you and your sister were both butterflies, where me and my sister, growing up with both of our parents in our home, were kind of isolated. I think I tried to blossom as a butterfly, but I was always constantly shut down just because of the religious undertone of every environment of which, whether it be family, whether it be an extra person coming out and, trying to fill in that gap. But, when my parents were working hard, I had several women that would step up. I had Janet, I had Brenda, I had Linda at times, Pat. And so those women were kind of very pivotal too. They were almost like my second moms in moments of which my mom couldn't be a mom.
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy that, you lived it and I felt like I was living it, even though I had them there, but they were constantly working just to live and providing for me and my sister, that I kind of felt like I wasn't a single family home.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's definitely challenging. And, when you think about how we met, obviously, kind of goes back to a little bit of my childhood where, I was born and raised, with my single mom and kind of raising my sister and I, and, attended a local school. It happened to be a Catholic school about 2 blocks from the apartment complex that I grew up in. Well, just in between that school and the school that you attended was like a community park. And for those of you who might be from the Orange County area, it was called Ziegler Park. And this park had, baseball fields, softball fields, basketball courts, had some handball courts. Ultimately, I think they built like a little splash pad and little community pool there as well. But in between our schools was this community park. And back in, kind of those early, 90s when we were, growing up, schools had to use community parks for their recreational facilities and for their team sports and their school sports. And that's really where we met was, I was finishing up school one day. You were out practicing your basketball. You were a part of the basketball team at the school. And volleyball. And
we did PE there. And then our art class, led by Mrs. Schuster, love her. She'll always have a piece of my heart. God bless her soul. We would go and take still life images where we would sit there in the park and draw. And I remember sitting there and we had to draw your school, Blessed Sacrament, which is the church and school of which you attended, of which I've never known that until we got to meet each other in that park.
That's right. That's right. Small little, kind of connection there between, art and what that looked like. But ultimately, kind of, strolling through the park after school, coming from a single parent household, wasn't picked up by my mom from school. There was no buses back then. No. And so you'd walk home, and those, 2 to 3 blocks that I'd have to walk home after school was ultimately where we met back in 1992. I know it sounds like forever ago, but ironically, that's when we kind of first met. But through that journey, through that childhood, through getting a chance to connect with you, it really led me to believe and to know how significant and important people in your life were, and had several influential folks at the church that you attended the school at, as well as at the school that I went to, that really kind of filled the void and the gap that I had in my life growing up as a kid. My mom was a fantastic single parent, fantastic single mom, but there's only so much that a working full-time single parent can do. And having some folks that, I ultimately connected with a kind of a Christian version of the Boy Scouts at the church that you went to the school at. It was called Royal Rangers. And back then it was essentially identical to the Boy Scouts. You earned merit badges. You learned how to do different life skills. You learned different, kind of camping techniques and functions. We got certified in how to shoot a bow and arrow and how to, cook a camp, dinner, how to start a campfire without a match, like all of those things that you typically would learn in the Boy Scouts. But the leader of that was a gentleman by the name of Jim Sheets. And he really had a big, big impact on me growing up, and, kind of fulfilled some of those fatherly figure roles in my life where, growing up in a single mom household, you needed some of those, kind of male influences in your life to kind of help fill some of those gaps. And Jim did that. He was loving, but at the same time, a disciplinary in my life. And, I was a bit of a rambunctious, young tweener back then. And, Jim loved me, but through that love, he also made sure that I understood, how to decipher between right and wrong, how to make sure the things that I was doing was reflective of, good, responsible development as a child. I'll never forget some of the stories of attending Royal Rangers on Wednesday night at the church. And, I'd be quite the, clown and, be getting into mischievous things. And I remember Jim having been a military guy in his previous life. I think he fought in the Vietnam War and maybe even some of the first parts of kind of the Persian Gulf War stuff. But he'd make me go out and lay down on the ground in the playground and do what we called the dying cockroach position. And, today that'd probably be completely, inappropriate and, uncalled for, and lawsuits would, ensue everywhere. But for me, it really taught me that discipline of how to balance, love and discipline. And what Jim was doing there was really impactful to me, and ultimately connected me to the church where you and I ultimately met.
Well, and two, give yourself grace too, babe, because as you're talking, I'm thinking, wow, we haven't pulled back to that chapter in a long time.
That's right.
In our journey. And to sit back and think as parents, right? Like living our lives through our kids, trying to, at each moment of correction or guidance, we're constantly, okay, hold on, let me take a pause and realize, what was I going through at this particular age, when we were their age. And you were trying to discover your personal relationship. Like you were struggling with always being brought up in the Catholic Church. Then you found this program with your best friend, which then you connected with this gentleman that was like a father figure for you because you didn't have it. Yep. And you needed it. Some sort of guideline kind of pathway of, what do I do from here and how do I continue to grow to be a man of which you're calling me? And I know I'm supposed to be, but I have no idea what that looks like.
That's right.
And so I think you were personally struggling, correct me if I'm wrong, of am I making the right thing? Because Catholicism is the only thing I know, but yet I've connected so much with so many relationally here at this church, different age groups. And I love this program.
That's right.
That's not offered in my institute of upbringing. So why don't you go in more? Like, that's pretty crazy to self-discover that at such a young age and be affirmative with it. Because I know it was a struggle for your mom many a times.
Yeah, I think for me, the big component of the transition that I went through from, ultimately a Catholic upbringing to, whether you want to call it a Protestant or evangelical, kind of experience, it really started with those relationships, right? It started with the connections that I had at the church and seeing the genuineness of the people, the genuineness particularly of the leadership of the church. The particular gentleman who ultimately was leading that church that you went to school at was a guy by the name of Pastor David Peterson. And many in the Orange County area probably have heard the name or even experienced this gentleman's impact. He started the chaplaincy program for the Westminster Police Department, helped take that on to other police departments within the Orange County area, but was really an influential guy. And you got a chance to see him in his life where the authenticity and yet the transparency was truly impactful to me growing up, right? Having not had a positive male role model in my life, it was really important for me to kind of see what does a good husband, father, man in the community look like, and seeing that in multiple examples within this program of Royal Rangers, I think really was a draw for me. I think secondarily to that, and not to get all religious and go down this, philosophical worldview perspective, but within the Catholic upbringing, it felt very liturgical, right? By nature, there's a lot of liturgy that goes into the Catholic experience. And a lot of it, to me, especially as I've gotten older, there's some of it you do miss, right? Thinking back to some of our experiences and, going to midnight mass and, even, some of the churches that we've attended as a family after being married and having kids, we've found some of our most, I think, probably spiritual connections in churches where that liturgical experience was evident. I think of a church that we were at in Maryland where that particular, church, the pastor had previously been a Methodist minister. Ultimately, during each and every week's, church service, they would partake in communion. After communion, they would actually recite the Apostles' Creed, which is something that the Catholic Church does in every single Mass. But particularly in this evangelical, non-denominational church, we really appreciated some of those liturgical experiences. But all of that really created for me as a young man some distance. And it felt like there was always this chasm between my identity as a human and my spiritual connection with, what we believe in to be the higher power of God through his son, Jesus Christ. And that chasm was never really quite connected for me. And the mystery that the Catholic Church describes with filling that chasm is what they call the Eucharist. And there's a lot of, to me, there's a lot of disconnect in that for me personally, not for everyone.
Like non-personal.
Yeah.
It's hard to be personal when there's such a distant kind of, like you go through something else or someone else.
That's
not
right.
that going directly to having that intimacy.
Yeah.
You're drawing in a third thing.
Yeah, a third party, right? And,
Yeah.
and again, for me, there's a lot that the Catholic Church taught me. I went to Catholic school my whole life, all the way up to a senior in high school, graduated from an all-boys Catholic high school in Orange County. There's a ton that the Catholic Church, I think, does extremely well. And so this is not a knock on the Catholic Church by any means. No,
absolutely not. And for me to sit here to be in silent I asked you a lot of questions. I asked your mom and sister a lot of questions because we met at such a young age.
That's right.
And pivotal age. And his sister was heavily and still is involved in the Catholic Church with all their religious programs and all these other things. And so I had the opportunity to be able to attend some of these things, which drew a broader perception of what I was brought in, which was extremely different. But what I loved about the Catholic Church is that they were so open to what they believed. They were so empowered to explain each and every processes of why we do it and what it means to do it. And that I think is so beautiful because I was just like, oh, wow, people really explain. At my church, I ask questions, I'm shut down. Like, this isn't the time and place. So I thought that was a beautifully unique fingerprint to the Catholic Church. So to this day, I still am in awe at some of the practices of which the Catholic Church does so beautifully to help the members understand what they're following, why they follow it, and how they do what they do.
That's right. Yeah. And I think anytime you get into larger institutionalized religion, right, there's obviously pros and cons to all of it, right? And we're not here to turn this into like a religious podcast, but there is something to be said about the structure and the consistency that's created in larger institutionalized religions. And look, I can say just on the flip side of that, where you kind of have this garden variety evangelical movements out there and all of these churches that essentially you have thousands of different approaches and dynamics involved. That creates its own set of challenges, right? You've got all sorts of, for lack of better terms, corruption and the major catastrophes that we've all heard of, right? If you haven't, lived the last 30 years and heard of all the corruption in the evangelical church, you just haven't lived, I guess. But there's this balance to all of it, that within larger institutionalized religions, the Catholic Church, even the Mormon Church, right, with the Latter-day Saints, we were blessed to live in a very saturated LDS community in Arizona, and some of the greatest family dynamic that there is. And take the doctrine and the dogma out of all of that. The reality is that every one of these religions are just trying to do what they think is right? They're trying to follow their convictions. They're trying to follow what it is they believe to be right. You hope that in most cases, if not all cases, people try to seek their own truth in all of that, and truly embrace their personal relationship and their personal convictions, and don't fall under the umbrella of, well, this was my grandma's religion or this was my parents' religion. But truly they go on a journey of understanding for them, what does that all mean? And that's really what happened to me. Was I went on this journey to really understand, what does it mean for me? And I know a long introduction to the first pair of shoes, but essentially this is where I really started to embrace what I'll first call the loafers part of my life. And I remember as a young 16-year-old kid having kind of grown up, kind of splitting my time between the Catholic Church and this evangelical church in Westminster with this Royal Ranger, Boy Scout program. There came this time for this fine arts festival. And this fine arts festival was an opportunity for young kids to demonstrate kind of things within the arts, whether that been some sort of interpretive dance, whether they were singing, whether they were doing videos. This was way back when videos were first a thing. They do video edits, or, in the church movement, they used to call them human videos, where there's kind of an interpretive dance to, some sort of, Christian song or something. But for me, I had a chance to kind of embrace an opportunity to share a 5-minute kind of message, or, if you would, sermon. And 16 years old, put together this whole dynamic behind what I was seeking to understand in this, the whole story within the Old Testament of Noah and the ark, and how it became, this elaborate story. Was it true? Was it just juxtaposition? Was it this example of what could happen? Was it kind of this, maybe parable of God's, timing and judgment on people and on the world? What did it really mean? But in all of that, I had a chance to kind of share this little 5-minute, very elementary understanding of Noah and the ark. And in that, I shared my message. First, you get up and you do it in front of your local, church. And then if you kind of make it beyond that round, then you go to the next round, the next round, and the next round. And I finally made it to what they kind of considered sectionals. And you went to sectionals and you had a chance to share that. But in all of that experience, right, as a 16-year-old, I was kind of this urban kid, used to, run around with my skater shoes and, my baggy corduroy jeans, if anybody remembers those. I had my Ben Davis shirts on, right, looking like the urban boy that I, thought I was trying to, put on this persona for. But in presenting this little 5-minute fine arts, message, I had a chance to really embrace more of this professional look. And for the first time, I had a chance to wear some dress shoes and some, dress slide-on loafers. I actually had to borrow them from, one of the gentlemen at the church, because again, growing up in a single-parent household, you couldn't just go out and buy, a pair of dress shoes so you could go and, deliver this 5-minute fine arts presentation. But in doing all of that, it really allowed me to feel more professional. And throughout my entire childhood and my life, I've really just embraced that side of professionalism. And I've had a chance to now build off of those through some stepping stones and, obviously working, most of my career in the professional world, now being, an executive. It really, truly, I think, shaped me and allowed me to embrace, and not to be cliche, and not that this is for everybody, but you got to dress the part, right? If you want to be something that you're not today, right? Surround yourself with those kinds of people, surround yourselves with those kinds of things. Right. It's the whole analogy that good golf inspires good golf. And that's really where the whole loafers piece came into play for me.
Or, the cliche that, in high school, it was dress for success Fridays, where, home economics. I don't know if our kids will ever know something like that.
Yeah. What is home economics, right?
But, it was dress for success. And everybody's just like, well, what does that mean? Well, when somebody dresses up to show up, to submit a resume, because back in the day, you actually physically showed up, didn't do it behind a keyboard, which we still plug for our kids today.
Yes, they do.
And, it's just when you dress up, you want to show up because you're dressing up to show up for something, whether it just be for yourself, because it does heighten your self-confidence in yourself because you feel better. And it's just that overwhelming feeling that I think that as a child you didn't get.
Yes.
And so when you stepped up there at 16, borrowed or not borrowed, there was something in that pivotal moment for you that was just like, oh my gosh, there is more beyond Westminster.
That's right.
There's something out there for me. It's bigger. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to discover it. And I think that's what's missing in our kids.
That's right. Our society today, I think, and again, this is just our opinion.
Just opinions.
Yeah, we're not professionals by any stretch of the imagination, but I firmly believe that there is a lost art of what I call professionalism in the world around us. And a perfect example, and he'll probably kill me for saying this, in the podcast, but
no, he won't.
One of our kids, who y'all can probably derive at who it is.
That's Byron.
Early on, after returning home from college, wrapping up his baseball career, he came home ready to kind of step into the professional world. Had his biology, studies under his belt, and was looking to kind of get into that line of work, and had applied at multiple places, hadn't really heard back. Multiple weeks, almost, I think a full month, maybe month and a half had gone by.
Oh my gosh, he was so depressed, guys.
So discouraged, depressed, struggling to kind of, hey, is this what I should be doing? I spent all this time, energy, and effort, and look, when you're getting a biology degree, that starts when you're like a freshman, sophomore in high school, right? Your love of science, Byron took AP biology, I think, as a sophomore. Took AP classes every single year to be able to, get into a really, top recognized biology program. Had a chance to do that, but was really struggling to land a job in the industry. And when we sat down and talked and kind of heard his heart, there was frustration that, man, I apply, I send off all these resumes, I'm applying on LinkedIn and all these other, recruiting websites, and nobody's even responding. And I'll never forget the day he called, and he had left. There's a local like entertainment district here that has a casino at it, and he left the casino, and he's like, look, I just interviewed. They're going to offer me, minimum wage to go be like a gardener at the
landscaping maintenance guy
at the local casino. We're like, what are you talking about, man? You've got a, almost $300,000 education that you got for free.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? You're going to go work for minimum wage, cutting grass at a casino. And in his frustration, just shared with him, like, have you thought about putting on a suit and tie and maybe a pair of nice loafers, taking your resume and a cover letter with all your letters of recommendation from your science teachers, and walking down into the lab you really want the job at. He's like, no, Dad, people don't do that these days. That's so old fashioned. That doesn't work anymore. Nobody does that stuff. Like that doesn't work anymore. I was like, okay, well, either you can try that and say it didn't work, or if you don't get the job, you can live the rest of your life wondering whether or not that would have worked.
Well, and he got a taste too when we were homeschooling in Modesto, because the schools weren't all that great. We took a pause in, the educational provided by the state. So we decided to do homeschooling. We met fabulous teachers. And he also was heavily involved in baseball.
That's right.
And I was a stay-at-home mom at the time, thank God, because of you being able to provide. We were able to have me stay home. And all of his fundraising, they had this catalog that they had to advertise in and, go out to each of these companies and try to advertise a portion. And each size of the advertisement in the catalog got them a little bit more of a kickback to their fees, for their tournament fees, for, uniforms and all that stuff that gets involved. And I said, Byron, this is you. And he just looked at me. He was like, well, everybody else's parents, just take it to work. And I was like, well, I am working. So I'm going to take you to the places and you're going to go in.
That's right.
And so, and I had asked Dad, of course, because I know what Byron's rebuttal would have been. Dad, did you know what Mom had me do? So I had said, hey, this day we're taking a pause off of academics and we're going to work on his fundraising. And I want him to present himself to go in there. What do you say? He's like, absolutely. Let's do this.
That's right.
And so we were able to fast forward 10 years and have a conversation of, Byron, don't you remember when you took ownership? Because even then, that young man walking into all these, businesses,
that's right,
putting himself out there, he's like, Mom, kids don't do this. I was like, just do it. This is your fundraising, not Mom's fundraising.
Yeah.
And they were like, dude, when you're 18, I'm going to hire you.
Yeah,
this
come
is
back.
amazing. I never had a young lad come in and represent himself or the organization of which they were participating to do their thing. And he fundraised well above and beyond.
Yeah, I think it was over $2,500, and and basically going to businesses asking just for hundreds of dollars for an ad in a program that we all know is going to be seen by 25 people, right? It's not a huge advertising venture for them, but all these businesses saw where they could invest in him. But again, to your point, fast forwarding 10 years, 11 years later, when he's searching for a job, he finally came to realize, you know what, this is kind of my last shot. This is my, my one and only attempt to get into the industry that I want to be in. And long story short, he took the advice of Dad and Mom and, put on a suit, took his resume down. Just by happen chance, there was, I guess, executive that was over multiple labs that happened to be there that day. And long story short, he ended up getting the job.
Yeah.
And primarily because, he had walked down, presented himself, and now he's done exceptionally well there. He's had multiple promotions, well into a career that can absolutely be extremely successful, supportive for him and his family, and a huge passion of his. But it all came because of that motivation to put on that professional persona and go down and represent yourself to this business. But when you think about, for me, the Loafers concept, that's really where it kind of ties into, my life. But moving on to the Cowboy Boots and where those kind of come into play. And I'm going to admit and acknowledge this is a bit of a stereotype, so I apologize, but we're just having some fun here, folks. So, don't blow up the comments sections and report us to, the, stereotype police. But when I think of Cowboy Boots, the reason why I chose that as another, kind of shoe reference is because when you think typically of cowboys, you think of workers, you think of hard-working folks. And I know for me, I really learned to work, honestly, from a very young age. The apartment complex that I grew up in, I remember from the time that, I was like, 10 years old. our apartment complex every year would get this dump truck full of sand to like refill the playground. And, the apartment complex manager, knowing that, my mom, was a single parent and, money was tight, they'd offer for me to go out and shovel all of this sand and move it into the playground at like 10, 12 years old. And, at the end of the week, I'd get, $20 for shoveling all of this sand. But I remember doing, these things, and it ultimately led to me getting a chance to work with the maintenance guy at the apartment complex, and, learning how to remodel apartments, do move-ins and move-out services, and, small repairs, learning how to, mow lawns and do, landscaping and gardening. We lived in a fairly large apartment complex. I think there's probably, 150 to 200 units in this apartment complex. It was fairly large. And learning how to do maintenance and support, but really working, right? I remember as a kid getting off and, for school from the summer, and like everybody's like, oh yeah, we're going to Hawaii, or, we're going to, the Bahamas, or, we're going to go and travel to Miami and Orlando and all these things. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I actually got to get up and go to work tomorrow at 6 a.m. and I'm like 12 years old. But really that really shaped me and created me to be, I think, someone that has taken on a work ethic throughout my entire life, from those very early years. And I've worked throughout my entire life. Even when I went to a all guys Catholic high school, there's no way my mom could afford to send me there. And so part of my scholarship was I had to work at the high school. And I'd work in the bookstore and the library. And, Christy's sister would actually take me to the high school, because it was about 10 miles from where we lived. And so I didn't have to take the city bus like I would during the school year. Christy's sister would take and drop me off during the summer. I'd work all day and come back and pick me up. And, that was essentially what I did. I was 14, 15 years old working at the bookstore and learning the importance and significance of work. And, not to gloat or brag or to, put myself in a position that's unworthy or boastful. But the beauty of all of that is that it's taught me a work ethic that I think has really benefited us in the long run. And I don't share this story a lot with folks, and I know a couple of close friends and family will know, but I graduated high school in June of 1998. And Christy and I knew that we were going to get married in August of 2000. We had a pretty long engagement.
18 months.
18 months. But in the course of all of that, we closed escrow on our first condo in November of 98. So, approximately 3.5 months after I graduated high school, we bought our first place. But it was because of that work ethic that really both of us had, right?
Yeah, I was working as a bagger at
That's right.
the El Toro Marine Base, and then went and followed my mom at the LA Air Force Base. And so it was tax-free.
It was tax-free.
I just drove in with my mom and drove back with my mom. But, every holiday, every weekend, and because he was working and I really wanted to spend my time with him, but being that he was working, I was able to save all this cash. And so between my sister helping with rides, he was able to save some, and then we would put, my makings aside, but we would take a little fun cash away, and I would buy Disneyland pass tickets and stuff like that, surprise them.
Yeah. But hold on, let's not make sure our audience gets ahead of themselves here, because back then, folks, the Disneyland annual pass for Southern California residents,
no blackout days,
with no blackout dates, was
parking included,
$99.
Yes.
So I don't think you can even go to the park for one day for that price now.
No.
Yeah. But nonetheless, the moral of that story was that, truly the work ethic that we developed, and, particularly the reference to Cowboy Boots represents, is hard work has really benefited us very, very well. And, from the moment that I was, 10, 11, 12 years old from the apartment complex, all the way till now when I'm let's just say in my mid 40s, I've worked almost every day of my life. There's not been a day that I've not worked. And I really, truly feel that it has benefited us. It's supported us and our family. God's been very good and has blessed the fruits of our labor. I truly believe that. But also, I think it also helps to portray to our kids that work is important and that there's value in being a hard worker and someone who truly gives their all in what they do. And there's honor in that. And being a person of honor is really important. And we've tried to instill that in all of our kids. And, one quick side story here is, in this day and age, there's a generation that sometimes don't share in that philosophy. And our oldest daughter was working, and in some conversations we had with her a couple months back, some challenges around, well, I just call out sick today because I want to go visit my boyfriend, or, hey, I want to go hang out with some friends, or, hey, I don't feel like going into work today. And having the conversation to walk through that and to convey that that's not honoring, that's not what responsible folks do, nor is that something that's going to bode for you long-term very well. And being able to share those lessons and learnings with our kids, coming from a place of experience, not a place of, hey, this is just what you should go do, but no, let's share with you what our experience has been and how it's paid off for us.
Yeah, because, to be honest, and full transparency is what we're doing here. None of us can say, or both of us, since we're talking about ourselves.
That's right.
Yeah. Let's stay there. We fight it too, and we have in the past.
Sure.
But we 100%. Also know that fighting that personal feeling of, I just don't want to, I can't. When you overcome that and you do and you be and you still show up.
That's right.
That day is more rewarding than the day that you felt, oh, good, I got this, I can conquer the world. It's like one of those things that you push beyond your personal selfish desire to just not want to, and push yourself to be and show up and allow yourself to expand on whatever opportunities come before you is amazing.
Yeah.
You would have missed all those opportunities if you never showed up.
That's right.
And 9 out of 10. And that's what our daughter ended up doing. There's just been many, many, many opportunities that has been blessing her throughout this long journey that she's been going through. But nonetheless, still just trying to, regardless how hard your journey is, if you keep on pushing on, showing up to be you, however that looks, like you don't have to be perfect. Don't slap pretty on it. Just show up and be you.
Yep.
And give what you got. Everything else.
It'll take care of itself.
Take care of itself. Absolutely.
Right. Yep.
Absolutely. And for our older ones to be tasting that and experiencing that, a little nitbit here, a little nitbit there, is just like, oh, okay, they're getting it because they're personally doing it.
That's right.
And, for us to just constantly be exemplifying it in every stage, because our older ones have lived through every stage with us.
It's
been crazy.
That's right. Moved and everything. Yep.
Yeah. And so just the beauty of what it takes to just be selfless in a selfish world.
That's right. Yeah. And
it's so hard.
Can't emphasize enough just for us as parents how important it's been to really model that work ethic. Look, in our mid 40s, we definitely play hard, but we work really, really hard to play hard. And being able to model and show that for our kids is really important. And one of the things that we've realized in the last, year or two is sometimes our kids, especially our older ones, only see the play hard side of what mom and dad do. And they need to also see the work hard side of it. And we've really tried to be more transparent and open about that.
Well, and I believe they had. I don't think we've sheltered or isolated. I think we've always been real parenting because I think to protect us in many assets, my parents protected me and my sister. Your mom protected you and your sister as much as she could. But there's only so much protection that you can. And being that we were so engaged in wanting to know more and learn more, we were so hungry of what's out there and what could be from outside of what we were living, that drew us to that extra step of, well, I'm just going to put myself out here and just expand and see what happens. Almost, not gambling, but kind of
almost,
hey, if I'm already being rejected, why not just do it a little bit more?
That's right.
But I think the beauty of it is just knowing that the sacrificial part is that we're not saying that we sheltered our older ones by all means, because they lived a lot. They will tell you. If we brought them on here, they would say what they did live. And it's been crazy. It's not always been like this.
That's right. Yep.
And like this is still hard. So it's just one of those things that trying to be real. But I also, through the hardness of Dad traveling, Dad was still present in every facet at home. But we did it creatively to where they didn't quite understand at the age of which they were at. So instead of going out to dinner, Mom would make a fun-filled meal matching a movie of which that they wanted to watch. So I just have to expand on my artsy side to try to creatively bring in an asset or a facet of which they thought was fun, but it was really just being savvy in the money aspect.
Yeah, and learning to evolve with your life circumstance,
Correct.
Right? And where you're at, embracing where you're at. And again, that's the whole going back to sometimes our kids only see the play hard side of it versus the work hard side. And that's really the all-encompassing approach to the work ethic that for us has really permeated our entire lives from our young age all the way up to where we're at today. And even going back, an episode where we talk about, we still work hard around the house, right? I mean, we have acres and acres and acres to maintain. We have a small family farm. We have, every day there's something to do.
Every day.
Here we are, recording a podcast, and there's, animals out back that, need to be taken care of.
And I'm like, you know what, hun? The beauty of it is I don't have to weed whack it later.
That's right. We'll just leave them. They're eating the grass that would have to otherwise be weed whacked. So we'll let them go at it for a while. But, nonetheless, let's wrap up here. Let's get to the final shoe.
Cleats.
Let's talk about cleats and why cleats represent who I am. So, for me, really, the cleats are a kind of a secondary persona that embodies being a coach. And I've had the awesome opportunity for me personally to have had some of the best coaches, both in a sport and a life aspect, really influence and support me throughout my life and throughout my childhood on into my adult years. And I've just tried to the best of my ability reciprocate that and give back to other, young men and even older folks through, being a professional coach in many aspects of development and support. But for me, growing up, probably one of the most influential coaches that I had in my life was actually my childhood baseball coach, and a gentleman, and I'll mention his name, was Rick Forsyth, and a gentleman who invested in me, again, coming from a single parent household with just my mom. She couldn't get me to baseball practice. And Rick went out of his way every day to pick me up from home, take me to practice, made sure if I, didn't have a glove or I didn't have a bat or, didn't have the proper gear, he was there to make sure that I had it. And a super, super influential guy. But beyond just like the support of being a baseball coach, he also was a very early on like father figure for me and taught me about, some of the hard work and the expectations of being disciplined both on and off the field and what that meant and how that would translate to success, both in baseball and in life. And, unfortunately, Rick here recently lost a battle with a terminal illness, and his family had a chance to celebrate his life. I'm still, connected to, his particularly his son who played on the baseball team with me. And, our hearts go out to the family. Yeah. But this is a gentleman who had impact on so many people. This is, folks, this is almost 30 years ago, probably a little more than 30 years ago, that I engaged and had a chance to, for multiple years, play baseball under Rick's coaching, live life with him and his family. But he really shaped my heart and shaped my mind to want to give back, right? Like, I was so impacted by the influence and the impact that Rick had on me that I wanted to give that back. And I've now, from, every place that we've lived, had a chance to be a coach, coaching, baseball for our boys, coaching in the professional world with people that I work with, helping them develop and grow. And now getting the chance to see that kind of duplicate itself in our oldest son, who's now also coaching and helping, young men, grow in their experience of baseball. But knowing that, look, I particularly coach baseball, but baseball is, I think, one of the greatest sports that you can use to teach about life, because you all know that life is full of adversity. Life is full of failures and getting back up, dusting yourself off, and getting after it, as the great Jocko Willink once said. And baseball, you will fail more than you will succeed. And for me, getting a chance to use the game to help young men, young boys develop, learn the significance and importance of discipline, learn what it is to work within a team, learn what it is to commit and follow through on your commitments. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure for me. And to don a pair of cleats, to me, it's like this representation of putting on what Rick taught me as a young man and being able to model that for the next generation of young men growing up. I had a chance to play baseball at a fairly high level, and through all of that experience, knowing that I still to this day have never made $1 on baseball. And through that experience, I want to be able to help young men who most will also never make $1 on baseball. I want to be able to help them use that game to help prepare them for life, teach them what it is to be a conqueror, someone who can overcome adversity and failure and use that to grow in their relationships with their spouses, their kids, and failures in life, whether that be setbacks in work, setbacks in community, whatever that may look like, trying to use the role of coach to help them in those aspects. And so that's really where cleats come along. It's a big part of our family. I know probably sometimes too much part of our family. We now have, over several hundred kids in our local program here that we run. Just had a chance to incorporate and become a nonprofit in the community that we live in now. It's a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of effort. But boy, I'll tell you, when it comes to seeing these young men grow and what they go through, it's absolutely remarkable and something that to me is just absolutely priceless. And I love to put on a pair of cleats and be coach for these young men. And there's nothing more impactful. I coach all the way up to the high school level, all the way down to, third grade right now. And you walk in to a varsity baseball game at the high school, and you've got an 18-year-old kid who comes up to you and gives you, a big bro hug and says, "Hey, coach, it's so great to see you," all the way down to a third grader who, is crying because they struck out and all they want is a hug from their coach. Those are some of the moments that, really encourage you to put on the cleats when it matters. So that's the cleats,
That's a beautiful picture, as dirty as they can get, but it is beautiful because, coach can be dirty. but it's a beautiful dirty. And to teach these boys of what I've learned of being an outsider. I'm not a coach. I do behind the scenes things. But, the beauty of they all win together. They all failed together.
That's right.
And to know that taking just that little nitbit, because even I say it with the girls because they're not wearing cleats in the sports of which they've chose. You still, in a work aspect, just because you're one individual showing up wherever you may be showing up, it's still, you call out that one day, somebody else has to pick up your bricks.
That's right.
And so if you're building a house, whether you're building a company, whether you're building something to success and to succeed, to move forward, the lack of not showing up puts everybody else at more work on their plate to constantly try to balance and move forward. And so the beauty of that aspect, that you're growing as an individual, you're succeeding and failing as an individual, but the bigger picture shows you're doing it all together.
Yeah.
And so it's just beautiful. We love the cleats in our home.
We do. We have probably too many pairs of cleats, throughout different times of the year. Our garage turns into a workout gym for, sometimes 40, 50 kids all at once. Our son does lessons here at the house. I do lessons here at the house. But we love our baseball community. We love these kids. I hope they all make the major leagues.
Yeah, that would
because
be
then I can go to
amazing.
all the major league games I want to. But the reality is that most will not. But what I do hope more than making the major leagues is I hope they invite me to their wedding, and I hope they send me a picture of their first child that they bring into this world, because that is when you truly feel accomplished as a coach.
Yeah.
And that's what you really hope for, is that you've had an impact on them such that they honor you in those moments of life that are so significant and so real. And so, but yeah, that's, folks, my story of
That's my boo.
Loafers, Cowboy Boots, and Cleats. We are super delighted that you guys tuned in and joined us today. We truly, truly appreciate you guys. Thanks for the grace and the support while we were gone out of the country, celebrating our daughter's 21st birthday. Many of you guys reached out and said, we can't wait for the next episode. So hopefully this episode finds you really, really well. We have turned the leaf towards spring. I'm not sure when it's going to show up here in our neck of the woods because it's still raining outside, but hopefully soon enough. And in the event of spring, we'll kick off our backyard Bougie Friday night wind downs. So for those of you that live local,
be on the lookout for that.
Be on the lookout because we're getting excited for it.
We may announce something that
That's
we may
right.
want you to cling to and respond to, and the first one to respond to it may get a free ticket.
That's
so
right.
We'll see. We're going to play
little
around
teaser
with it.
there.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So, but with that said, folks, we truly are delighted that you have chose to listen in. Whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on your favorite podcast provider, we truly appreciate you. If you could just like and subscribe, it really helps us just kind of get the word out. You guys know from our many first episodes, we are not looking to monetize this. There is no, money or support other than just knowing that you guys are out there. We'd love to continue to make this content for you guys and just help be a blessing for your life. So if this has been supportive for you, please like and subscribe. Comment down below. Again, we read all of those comments. If there's any way that we can be a blessing or support to you, if there's something you'd like to hear or know more about, please let us know. We'd be happy to cover that on an upcoming episode. But in the meantime, like we always like to say around here, stay bougie and stay real. Salud.
Salute.